Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're here to consider three nominations: Michael Barr to be the Fed Vice Chair for Supervision, Mark Ueda, and Jaime Lizarraga to be SEC Commissioners. These nominations remind us of the importance of financial regulators abiding by their respective statutory mandates. This principle really should be nonpartisan. A fundamental aspect of a properly functioning democratic society is that important public policy decisions should be made by elected, accountable representatives. Otherwise, what's the point of the elections? Unfortunately, I'm deeply concerned that financial regulators, including the Fed and the SEC, are increasingly straying into contentious political issues wholly unrelated to their mandates and expertise. These include issues like what to do about global warming, social justice, even education policy. Now, no doubt these are important issues, but they're wholly unrelated to the limited statutory mandates and expertise of financial regulators. The Fed, for instance, has been weighing in on every one of those contentious issues. Some intend to use the Fed's expected climate scenario analysis to steer capital away from carbon-intensive industries. All 12 of the reserve banks have sponsored a Racism in the Economy series where invited speakers advocated for particularly politically controversial ideas, including race-based reparations and defunding the police. And the Minneapolis Fed has been actively lobbying to change Minnesota's constitution on the issue of K-12 education. Does anyone really think these activities are within the Fed's statutory mandates? Of course not. In February, we held a hearing to consider Sarah Raskin's nomination to be the Fed Vice Chair for Supervision. At that hearing, I cautioned that the hearing was not just about vetting Ms. Raskin. I noted that it was a referendum on the independence of the Fed in the face of pressure from some on the left who wanted to use the central bank to allocate capital to address global warming. Addressing contentious issues like global warming require political decisions that involve trade-offs. Trade-offs like how expensive should credit be for oil drillers in order to make gas more scarce and costlier for motorists. And if we limit domestic oil and gas production, causing energy prices to rise and consumers to pay more, how much more is appropriate? In a democratic society, those trade-offs must be made by elected representatives who are accountable to the American people, not unelected central bankers. Ms. Raskin's prior advocacy that unelected financial regulators should use their powers to address global warming led to the Senate's bipartisan rejection of her nomination. That rejection sends a powerful message to Fed nominees, including Professor Barr, and that is that all Fed governors must commit to not exceed the Fed's limited statutory mandates, and by doing so, help to ensure the continuing independence of the Fed. The need for a Fed that's focused on its mandates is especially critical with inflation at a 40-year high. Even though wages are rising, prices are rising much faster, and that's causing workers, especially lower-income workers, to fall further and further behind. I hope that Professor Barr will acknowledge today that inflation is severe and commit to doing whatever it takes to bring inflation back down. Professor Barr certainly has an impressive background and relevant experience to serve as the Fed Vice Chair of Supervision. However, some of his previous work raises some concerns and questions about his views on financial regulation. Professor Barr strongly opposed the bipartisan S-2155 bill that Senators Tester and Warner helped to craft, which really enacted modest and sensible reforms to Dodd-Frank. He also argued that climate change presents severe long-term risks to the economy and financial stability that must be urgently addressed today. As I've discussed, there is no systemic risk to the banking system posed by the gradual changes in the Earth's average temperature. I'll be interested in hearing Professor Barr describe the actions he believes the Fed should take to address these supposed risks. Keeping financial regulators apolitical and independent is as important now as it has ever been. To my Democratic colleagues who favor using financial regulators to address contentious political issues, I ask, how would you feel about a future Republican administration under the pretense of financial stability risk, using the Fed to allocate capital toward maybe increased defense spending or financing a border wall or offshore oil development? Once the precedent is set, the potential for further abuse by both political parties is limitless. Now, in addition to Professor Barr today, we'll also hear from two nominees for the SEC. Mr. Lizarraga has worked on financial services issues on Capitol Hill for many, many years. I commend him for his long-standing commitment to public service. And in a few moments, I will introduce Mr. Ueda, who is exceptionally well qualified to serve as an SEC commissioner. I look forward to hearing from all three of our nominees.